Morning and welcome back to Talking Your Walk. I have a wonderful guest this morning, and he is part of a duo who created Chakrascension. Now, Chakrascension is an energy form of healing, and Robert will tell us more about that than me talking about it. But I've known them for many years, and they've done lots of exhibitions, lots of talks. I'm really looking forward to finding out what this journey is about, because I'm sure it's going to be fascinating. So without further ado from me, let's pass over to Robert. So good morning, and how are you?
I'm really well, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, June. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to sharing my journey with everyone.
I'm looking forward to hearing it. So can I ask you, first of all, where were you born?
Well, I was born in Birmingham, in Aston, which is like inner city Birmingham, and I was born in 1960, so I'm 60 this year. And we were very poor. We lived in back-to-back housing, and my mom eventually came to live with me and passed away in 2011. And she kept everything, and I saw after she'd passed away that the places that we lived were part of the slum clearance, because there was a lot of, they built the Aston Expressway and a lot of houses went. And actually, it's interesting because they were deemed to be slums, and where we moved to was not as good. We lost that sense of community. Obviously, everyone was very meticulous about cleaning their houses, and so it always seemed to be clean and full of excitement. And so it was interesting reading about it, that it was deemed to be inappropriate for people to live there, and when we moved, I really think my mom sort of struggled to get over the move from where she'd lived most of her life. Yeah.
I think that happened, didn't it, in a lot of cities in the 60s. They sort of cleared away. They were seen as slum areas as such. However, a lot of it was because the landlords didn't actually live there. They lived elsewhere, and it was corporations that managed these
Yes,
housing
yeah,
areas.
yeah.
Same
And
in Glasgow.
Birmingham's quite an interesting place, because it's sort of uh, you have areas of that are seen as low market areas, and then right next to them there's very affluent areas. And I think it's sort of the idea that everyone started in the center, and as the city grew, they moved outwards. And so then you can almost track how upwardly mobile people are by whether they live in Erdington or whether they lived in Sutton Coldfield and Four Oaks, etc. So it's quite interesting to see that and to have lived through it as well.
So you were born there. You went to school there. What did you do when you sort of left school?
Okay, well,
How did you get on at school? What kind of child were you at
uh,
school?
I think I was quite a funny child. I think I was quite studious as well. I remember um, some interesting things that I think back now, and I think to myself, oh, that's possibly an indicator of what you would become. I remember once we were in assembly, and somebody said, if you'd like to learn to play the piano, please see Mrs. I can't remember the teacher's name after assembly. And I do recall being at the doors of the hall, and there were three of us. Two other boys and me, and she said to each boy, have you got a piano at home? And the two boys said yes. So she said, oh, you can learn to play the piano. And she said, what about you, Robert? Do you have a piano at home? And I said, no, I don't. And she said, well, I'm ever so sorry, you won't be able to learn because you won't be able to practice. And I remember saying to her, but surely if I had a piano at home, I'd already be doing lessons. And I thought that was quite an interesting thing. I must have been about 6 at the time.
Wow, great insight into the man you were to become.
Yes, and then I remember also that I had quite a good singing voice, and I remember um, in we had female teachers all the way through. In the last 2 years, we had male teachers. And I guess when I was about 9 to 10, we had a young male teacher. And then when I was 10 to 11, we had an older teacher. And the older teacher was just a brilliant teacher, really very, very insightful, encouraged us to read. The younger one was a bit cocky. And I remember they said, if anyone wants to try out for the school choir and sing at the town hall in Birmingham, come down to assembly at 10:30. And I remember we were in our classroom, and the teacher, the younger teacher, said, any girls that want to go down and sing in the practice to sing in the choir, go now. So all the girls, virtually all the girls in the class left. And so it's just the boys. And I sat there and I remember feeling it getting hotter and hotter and thinking, I've got to say something. So I put my hand up and said, I want to go as well. So I went down and I got in, you know, and I thought it's about fighting for what you believe is right, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and isn't it a shame that they didn't even think to ask if any of the boys wanted to go?
Yes.
In the choir. I mean, and listening to the teacher, it says you couldn't play piano because you didn't have one at home. I mean, there was a piano in the school, obviously, so why couldn't you use that?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it was very regimented time, you know.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
At home, there was just me, my mom, and my sister. And my mom was an interesting lady. She was born deaf. So she was exactly 30 years older than me. And she was born in Nechells, which is another inner city area of Birmingham, just next to Aston. And I reckon that, because she was a brilliant woman, but she had a combination of three things that were against her. One, she was female. Two, she was deaf. And three, she was very poor. I think if any of those had been slightly different, her life expectations would have been greater. But she also told us from a very early age that she had two twin aunts that brought her up. And they were very psychic, and they were twins, and they were seventh children, and they were born with cowls on their faces. And so all these things, my mom greatly believed in, intuition and psychic abilities. And she also always said, I believe in God, but I don't believe in religion. So she's quite a free thinker from that perspective.
Absolutely, especially back then. So was she the one that influenced you in looking at things from a spiritual perspective?
No, I wouldn't have said so, but I think I can see when you look back that it was there, but I'd never really put a name to it. And in actual fact, when we were younger, we didn't know we were poor, but we were poor. When I got to about do my A levels, and the only careers advice that I had from school was you must go to university, Robert. But that was not a possibility because we had no gas, we had no electricity. You know, I couldn't go to university and leave my mom on her own. So I just got the first job that I could get. And if I'd have got the very first job, I'd have been in insurance, but I didn't get that one. And then the second job I got was working as a tax junior for a firm of accountants. So I did that and started working. So my sort of time was very much spent, just concentrating on, just concentrating on living really and paying off the debt and that sort of thing. And then, so it takes about 10 years. So when I was about, probably a bit longer than that, when I was about 15 and feeling more established, Alan, who I'd met when I was 25, so we've been together for about 35 years, and he had gone to do Reiki. He did Reiki 1, and then he did Reiki 2, and he went with a friend, Lorraine, who was a yoga teacher. And that's how it happened. She'd gone to a dinner party, and she met a lovely lady called Val Rainbow, who I think is a comedian in Birmingham, and they had a dinner party, and Val said, "Oh, I've just done Reiki today," and Lorraine passed her hands between Val's hands, and she said she felt the air was like toffee. So they both said, "Oh, let's do this." So I was the driver. I took them, and then in 1996, I decided to do Reiki 1 myself. So it was around about my birthday, and I went to a nursing home in Stourbridge, and they'd got an annex where 2 very nice ladies, Margaret and Enid, Margaret Skidmore and Enid Headley, were teaching Reiki together, and there were 13 of us in the group. And the first day, Saturday, was really exciting, lovely day, lots of laughs, full of energy. The second day, I literally did nothing but cry all day. You know, it was really funny thing. It was just like a dam had broken within me. And I just cried and I cried and I cried. And it was, thinking back, it was quite surreal because people would be doing their Reiki exercises, and then they'd come up and comfort me, and then they'd go off. But I just literally couldn't stop. And afterwards, I had to give it a name. And I related it to the fact that my father had died when I was 2. And I had never really expressed that grief as such. And I just took it for granted that I didn't have a father, and I'd never expressed the grief of having a real person not in your life. And so that all went. And bless her, Margaret sent me a letter afterwards to say, oh, there is grief counselling and that sort of thing. But I actually felt I didn't need it. Do you know what I mean? It was such dramatic clearing, healing, that it all went, and I didn't need it. And I guess that great big wedge of grief that I'd been carrying was gone. And so then I was able to replace it with something. And then very rapidly, I did Reiki 2 and Reiki Masters. And it was very quick, but it took me quite a time to get my head around it. And then our Reiki Master, Val Redding, introduced us to the Ascending Masters, and particularly Kuan Yin. And so I feel as if I've had a 25-year real experience of knowing Kuan Yin, knowing her energy, knowing her mercy and compassion, and how that then has pushed me down the route of intuition and clairvoyance. And I'm quite interested with that, because I think sometimes people feel they want the knowledge. It's almost like, oh yes, of course we want the knowledge. And then actually when you have the knowledge and when you have the intuition, you realize that what comes with that is a great sense of responsibility. And also that you also quite quickly see that people want you to live their lives for them, and they want you to be there on hand to enable them to do their journey. And of course, with all of us, we have to do the journey on our own. It's our own unique journey. And so I have a very interesting, I wouldn't say it's love-hate relationship, but I do have a situation where sometimes I pick it up, where I feel guided to do readings, etc. And then other times I leave it well alone, because I think, you know, it's something, it's a different calling, and it's not necessarily the calling that I have as such.
So going back there to your dad passing as well, that's further testament to the strength of your mother, isn't it, to bring up 2 children
Oh,
on
absolutely.
her own.
Yeah, absolutely.
Being deaf, you know, that brings its own problems. And then, you know, as you said earlier, being a woman and then being brought up in a low market area, shall we say.
Yes.
I mean, wow, what a strong woman
Oh,
she
she
must
was.
be.
She was very feisty. She was only about 5'2", but very feisty. And also she was that, you know, she got a lot of charisma about her. She was a really good mimic, um, and obviously a lot of people hearing her wouldn't understand her because she got a very specific way of talking, you know. And it's really funny because Alan and I were very fortunate because she came to live with us in her latter days. And when I was a child, she always talked about the war. And it's interesting, we're going through COVID now, and she always, for her, because the war started when she was 9 or 10, 1939, and it was traumatic because her beloved mother died in 1939. And I think her father was a lot older. Her three brothers went into the forces, so there obviously was a big gap between them. And her father couldn't look after her, so she went to live with her great aunts, these twins that I mentioned, who lived next door to each other. And my mom talks about it as a really exciting time. And then she always said that she was evacuated to Wales. And it's interesting, years later, how we come to move to Shrewsbury. And as I drove her here, she knew. She knew it all. And it was, I reckon it wasn't Wales. It was probably a farm in Oswestry because she knew, you know, the places. And I remember a very dear friend of ours came at the same time, and she was sitting and she watched my mom in our sitting room, and she said, "Oh, your mum looked really comfortable," as if to say, "This will do me." So I said to her, "Do you want to come and live with us?" And she said yes. So she came to live with us. And you know, and so I feel that, because what she did say was that she, after the war, where she was used to the open air with the farm, with the animals, she really didn't want to go back to the inner city in Birmingham, but she did, you know. And then her life, you know, had quite a sad path as such, but she literally ended up being back in the place that she'd always wanted to be, you know. And she loved the rabbits, and of course in our garden we have lots of rabbits. And in 2011, when she was 81, we took her to uh, uh, Las Vegas for 2 weeks because she'd always wanted to go, because her father was American and she'd always wanted to go there. So we took her there, and obviously thinking back, she was not well. And when we got back, around about September time, she went off tea. Well, my mom was just like a chain drinker of tea. She'd have one cup of tea after another after another. So I thought, oh, so I thought, oh, that's really strange that she's gone off it. And then we had a lovely doctor, and he came to see her, and he said, oh, she just needs to go into hospital to have some fluids, and she'll be right as rain. So then when we went in, within about 2 days, they called me and said, no, she's got a secondary tumor, it's a brain tumor. She won't last 24 hours. And quite traumatic. We were all at the hospital in Shrewsbury. And then I looked at her and I thought, now I'm not in denial that she's going to die, but I don't think she's going to die in 24 hours. So I asked for the fluids to be put back in. And then she actually came home on the Tuesday, which was my 51st birthday. And then she actually lived for a month. But it was a glorious autumn, and the weather was fantastic, but we did not see a single rabbit in the garden. And I thought, well, that's very strange, because she always used to, if I went to work, came back, she'd say, oh, there were lovely rabbits in the garden today. And then on the day that I knew she was going to pass, I said to Alan, I'm going to go and sit in with her because I think she'll go soon. And literally I went in, and there was the biggest rabbit I've ever seen in the garden. And I feel that he came, or she came, to take her. And I felt very moved, and to attune my mom. I mean, obviously she was in a coma, she wasn't conscious, but I felt that I wanted to attune her, and I attuned her at level 1 because I felt that that would help her journey, you know. And it was really beautiful, you know, a really beautiful thing to do.
Great honour.
Well, absolutely. And I think sometimes people are scared to death, but I think it's a rite of passage. And, you know, and I also think the thing is, I am convinced we do not leave this incarnation until we've achieved everything that we need to do. And I think sometimes as a human, because of the flight or fight response, we fight to be here because it's taken a lot for the soul to come into the physical body, and we fight to stay here. And naturally, when you hear that a friend or somebody has got some sort of cancer, or you know, something, your head thinks we've got to send Reiki energy or Chakrascension energy or whatever energy, positive thoughts, prayers, and with always that thought of so that they get better. But I always think so that they achieve what they need to, because I don't think death is the defeat. I think it's the actual victory. You know, almost as if celestially you've reached the podium and you're getting your gold medal. And the sad part of death is actually who you leave behind, not what you're doing with your soul, because your soul's eternal.
I had one person say to me a long time they felt that death was the ultimate healing experience.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a lovely way of expressing that, you know.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's interesting because we've been doing a lot of work lately. COVID's quite an interesting time. And we've been doing a lot of work with a daily meditations with the Ascended Masters and feeling their energy, their sublime energy. And what I feel then is, I was working with Sananda last week, and he was telling me, he gave me an image of actors. And so I don't, if people aren't familiar, but there are two types of acting. There is the traditional Laurence Olivier, you get on, Judi Dench, well-trained actors where they get on, they're on the stage, they do their part, but they're not the part. They come off. And then there are other actors who totally immerse themselves, and they're like method actors, you know. And Sananda was telling me, actually, we are on stage. We are actors who are performing roles in this third dimensional existence. But don't forget who you are. He was saying, don't forget that you're a divine soul, and don't necessarily buy into, don't go native and get so entrapped in the part and the role that you're playing in this life that you actually forget your divine connection and that link. You know, so I was very intrigued with that.
So you're married to Alan.
Yes.
So how did that come about? You know, no, because then he did his Reiki. You've been together in this relationship. You then got married, and then you founded Chakrascension. So how did, you've been together a long, long time, over 3 decades. So it must have been a great feeling when both of you combined your energy and lives, and then naturally and almost organically created and founded Chakrascension. How did that come about?
I was fascinating because firstly, we think of ourselves as being very lucky. To have shared this journey together. It all started that when I was about 24, I decided that, obviously I missed out on university. I'd got my job and I was working, but I decided I wanted to do a couple of things for myself. And so I started by, the first thing was going horse riding. And then the second thing I did was I went to ballet and at Birmingham Dance Centre. And because I'd always been quite good at country dancing when we did country dancing at school, and I just liked it, and I wanted to do something completely different and using my body as well. And so, and Alan was a dance teacher at the Birmingham Dance Centre, and we just had, so much fun in our lives in different settings. You know, we used to do shows. We did shows for old age pensioners. We, you know, danced on the back of a float in the Birmingham carnival, that sort of thing, or just exciting things. And then when Alan said, oh, I want to try this holistic stuff, I thought, oh, that's really good. And then we started to get involved. And then uh, shortly after doing our Reiki Masters, 3 months later, we did Karuna Masters. And when we did the Karuna attunements, Alan saw this symbol, which was then to be the first of what's turned out to be 13 symbols. And then we started working with that. And then at that time, because Reiki was the biggest thing, everyone was saying, oh, this is Reiki. This is a new version of Reiki. And for a time, we wondered if it was Reiki. And then I think one of the most empowering things that we suddenly thought was to actually acknowledge, no, it isn't Reiki. It's not the same energy. And we took 20 years to, for various reasons. Firstly, when you get something like that, you think to yourself, oh, is this real? Is it just our imagination? You start working with it. And then when you get the confirmation or the affirmation that it is real, what you then start to do is to think, okay, so is it just for us, or does it have a wider application? And so you literally take a time, and then obviously work was busy. I went to work for a not-for-profit organization. I'd done lots of work with disabled people and in my spare time, and then obviously my mom passed, and then Alan was really ill, nearly died in 2008, and so there was lots of things that sort of took us off our journey, as it were. And then when my mum passed and Alan finally finished teaching at the college in 2014. He took early retirement. We then thought, okay, now's the time to pull it all together and to, you know, to get it out there. And I would have to say our first official public testing of it was that event that you used to hold at the Priory in 2015. So that was the first time that we'd actually got our stand up, and we'd done previous ones with the Reiki. We'd done a big one at the NEC years ago, around about 2000, but that was the first time, and it just seemed to all click. And then of course you then start working with people, and they start getting reporting back that the energy is working for them. And I think also it must have been like that with Reiki. You start off and you've got palpable energy, but the more people that do it, the stronger it seems to grow. And that's actually because of all those individual people making the links with the Ascending Masters and working with it. So I think that's how it sort of, it's been slowly unfolding and evolving, as it were.
Because you've got it accredited as an FHT.
We did, yeah, yes, yeah. Now with FHT, obviously, all of these holistic therapies, like Reiki, for instance, there's no scientific evidence that it works. You know, so what they don't do is they don't accredit the therapy, but what they accredit is the teaching of it. You know, so they can say that the standard is to a certain standard, etc. You know, and so we worked really hard with that, and we were very happy to have had that. And we're looking to accredit with other agencies, because I remember I used to teach at North Birmingham College in the evening. I used to teach the VTCT Reiki course, and that was really a very good course and very rewarding. And so, you know, I think sometimes people fear accreditation as being a bit bureaucratic, and I think it just shows that there's a certain standard. But certainly with the accreditation of Reiki and getting the national occupational standards, that's enabled that to go into hospitals.
Yeah, very much like spiritual healing went through a similar path many years ago. And it means, you know, when people see that it's accredited, whether they're a student or whether they want to go on and teach it. It means that they have a certain code of ethics that they've got to follow. It also means, as you say, that there's a standard of teaching and sharing of the information. I think it's marvellous what you are doing. And you teach this all over the country, but you also do it online now.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. As part of now, what we don't do, we haven't. I don't think we're inclined to do is to do a pre-recorded. So it's a bit like this. It's actually online, but it's one-to-one. You know, so it's an in-person training, and I think you know, part of our sort of tradition is to be somewhat dubious about online training, because our training, and obviously through Reiki, for instance, has always been, it's an oral tradition where you're in the studio. I've seen that William Rand is doing online training as well in a similar sort of vein, and you know, I think it's the way things move on. And certainly I've been very impressed with the results that Alan has achieved with online training, because people feel the energy. And it's interesting as you sort of look through the history, because one of my wishes, because I love history, and I would have, if you'd have asked me when I was about 15, I would have loved to have been a history teacher. And so I've done sort of almost like an archive of Chakrascension, because I guess, you know, you get charismatic people, and I don't necessarily think that we're charismatic, because what we try to do is to push the masters. It's not about us. It's about the ascending masters. And so what we're doing is we're embedding it so that as many people in our lifetime can learn it, so that it will continue after our death. And what we're hoping, you know, and you never know, because obviously with finances and what have you, you might have to use all of your finances to go into residential care. You've no idea what's going to happen in the future. But what we do want is to leave money so that that system can continue after we're gone, because it's not about us, it's about the ascending masters and about their energy and their working with people, you know. So we'll try, Alan's very funny man. He's very humorous, and so and he draws people to him. But what we try to do is to, you know, it's not about us; it's about the masters.
I think anybody who knows you or have trained with you would know that about you anyway, that you are very kind, very gentle, very honest healers, and you know, you work with great integrity. I mean, anybody I know that's trained, we have loved the training and speak very highly of you. And indeed, I speak highly of you myself, because I know that the two of you combined make you know, a formidable team. and you do it from the heart, and that's what's important. So you know, you're saying it's a fabulous legacy to leave. What are your sort of plans for the future?
Okay, so it's interesting. Some more information's coming through, so we're open to see where that goes. And we want to. I feel, because a lot of my work is actually my actual day-to-day job has taken me to America, so I feel that it will take off in America. One of our students has trained somebody distantly in Australia, so there's the possibility that that will happen as well. And I'm just really sort of open to, you know, the possibilities of, you know, come on. It's interesting because, you know, when you have a stand and you sit there and you're busy, you think that, oh, that's really great. And then sometimes it's quiet. And you know, and I never feel, oh, what are we, you know, what are we doing wrong this time? I always feel, oh, it's quiet for a purpose. It might be because we need some rest and recuperation. It's also that the masters, you know, are waiting, you know, to choose the people that it will resonate. So I never, you know, because in that sort of where you've got events, generally speaking, people are very supportive, you know, and I think that's really, everyone's there. And I think most people will have that feeling of, it's actually in a range of different therapies, different readers, different crystal stores, the right person will be guided by the powers of spirit to where they need to be. And so I'm always fascinated that I remember once, and this is that sort of, sometimes I read, sometimes I don't read, and sometimes it goes well. With me, it's either all or nothing, you know. So sometimes I'm absolutely mobbed out and people can't get to see me, and then other times nobody's it's not my day to read for them. And I remember once I was at an event in Nantwich, and I sat there and I thought, oh, and I have a lovely sort of magpie, because my totem is magpies. I love magpies. And I had this cloth that when I go, say if I go to get a cup of tea or I'm not reading at that moment, I'll cover the table. And I literally thought, it's not happening today. And Alan said, oh, I said, yeah, I don't think it's today is happening. So I covered the table. And then this lady came and I gave her a reading. And I think it was the most accurate, you know, that I've ever been. So, you know, it's interesting how I think spirit will, you're driving down and you think you know where you're going, and then they'll suddenly go, oh, go down this road, you know, this is an interesting path for you to do. So I'm always open to the possibilities.
Yeah. So you know, one of the things that's come out of COVID is that, you know, a lot of people, as you say, William Rand, uh, doing the Reiki online, and you know, yourself, you're doing some stuff online. I think that's what's going to be happening for a lot of the energy work that's being done on the planet, is that it will go online, because, you know, we do it through distant healing anyway, which works perfectly well. Power of prayer works perfectly well. So, you know, I see the online courses as working well. There would have been a time maybe I would have thought, oh, you need to be one-to-one for that connection, you know, but I think doing it online's working fabulous at the moment. So do you, and it opens it up to people in other countries or people who
Absolutely.
can't get to you. You know, it's
Absolutely.
environmentally more friendlier to do it
Yes,
this way.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, you know, I mean, obviously with the COVID, there's been some really sad things, people, you know, losing people and not being able to go to funerals, that sort of thing, you know, the health workers. But also, I think it's been a very interesting time for about 2 years ago, I started working with Lady Virgo. In our system, we call her Lady Virgo, but she's otherwise known as Ascending Master Gaia. And I started working with her. And before I started working with her, I actually had an idea that Gaia was actually about lovely, pretty flowers and, you know, peace and harmony. And actually, when I've met her and worked with her, she's more like Boudica. She's a force to be reckoned with, the force of nature. And she hinted that there would be a shake-up. And so, and you know, when you walk around taking your, when we were in absolute lockdown and you were taking your 30 minutes of exercise, you actually were deafened by the sound of birds, and you saw that people in Venice could actually see the bottom of the canal, and they'd got dolphins. And I think, and then I realized that for about 4 weeks, I'd not put any petrol in and not driven my car. And you suddenly think, well, actually, this is a taste of what we could do to make things less complex and less damaging to, you know, the whole planet, as it were. You know, and I think you're absolutely right. I think people are going to be far more interested in what's happening inside, what's happening externally. I don't say capitalism is dead, but I think that big drive for ever constant, or the profits have got to be greater. I don't know about you, but I always think, you know, when you hear on the radio the headlines and they'll say, oh, Sainsbury's has reported a 5% drop in profits, you know, and I always think, well, but they're still making a profit, you know, and how much profit does everyone need?
And that's it, isn't it? It's between making a living and being greedy. And I think that's this, as COVID has shown up some companies who only think about the money, and it's shown up some companies who have put their employees first.
Mm.
And you know, really tried their best to keep them in jobs or made up the difference, you know, even though they're not getting any income. I guess it's like that in life. There's always that sort of swings and roundabouts effect, isn't there?
Yeah, and I also there's some things, whether they're long-lasting effects, but for instance, especially in Shrewsbury, if you sort of walk around, you think, where have all the homeless people gone? And then there was the thing about Centre Point, no homeless people, because obviously, because the hotels were empty, they were putting them in the hotels. So that actually is an indicator that if people tried hard enough, some of these endemic problems in society could be solved. You know, it's like, and I'm not particularly political as such. I guess because of my background, I'm probably more socialist than, you know, anything, but I'm not political with capital P. But what I do think is interesting was we were told there was no magic money tree. And now, quite rightly, there has been a lot of money to actually help people because of what we're facing. And so that's interesting. You think, oh, actually, things change. And, you know, that sort of idea where around about the millennium, where we were moving from the Piscean age into the Aquarian age, I feel that we're now definitely into that sort of idea of not being told this is how society structures itself. This is how we Aquarian is actually about discovering ways of being and ways of connecting, that you're not told you be like this, you actually explore and instinctively know how to be with people.
I think it's an amazing age
Yes.
to live in and experience. It may not be entirely pleasant for a lot of people, and it may be the best thing that's happened to a lot of people. I know a lot of friends and people who are, you know, spending precious time with their family or seeing their kids growing up and spending time with them, but they never would have had that opportunity. So again, it's that swings and roundabouts, isn't it? You
Yes.
know, and it's a balance as well.
Mm.
So if I was watching this and I wanted to get in touch with you, what's the best? Do you have a website that people
We
can
do have
contact?
we have a website called www.chakrascension.org.uk. And so if you put in Chakrascension, you'll find us. We also have a Facebook page,
Yeah.
and we've also got a YouTube channel. Alan's very good at meditation videos, so he's put some up there. There's a great one. It's very funny because Alan is really instinctive, but he's not always adventurous. And we were doing an event, and they asked us to submit an outline for a meditation, something different. You know, because initially, because it was fairly new, it was generally we were doing a talk and a meditation about Chakrascension. And then we were going back to places. And I was filling out the form, and Archangel Michael came to me and said, do this. So I filled it out, and I said, oh, this is a video. The meditation will be about helping people use the Archangel Michael to cut negative cords. And Alan went, what? I can't do that. But it's been one of his most popular
Yes.
meditations, and then he's working on another one with Kuan Yin as well, and so he's going to put those out there on YouTube, and
Oh,
it's quite interesting where we have this sort of different skills, because I've always been quite practical. Obviously my background is accounting and IT, and also the other side is the sort of the artistic side, which I will talk before I finish. I must talk about the cards and what have you, but so I can do all of the splicing and get the videos done and what have you. But with regard to the cards, it's interesting because I loved art when I was at school. And I remember doing a A-level mock exam.
and
And
these are the cards that you have as part of, these are the Chakrascension cards.
yes, yeah, absolutely. And they're depictions of the symbols and the masters. But years ago, when I was at school, I loved art. And I remember we did a mock A-level exam. And I read the thing and it said, you've got different choices that you could do. And I read a thing called, and it said stuffed bird in a case. And obviously traditionally, I think people would think it was a stuffed bird in a glass case. And I didn't do that. My imagination, I'd got like this big suitcase where there were all ties and socks and this stuffed bird in the case. And I remember that we had a horrendous session where it was really bad teaching. The teacher had us all, everyone round her desk, and she showed the art and critiqued it, and then she got mine and basically said, what can I say? How terrible. And, really tore it apart. And I actually thought at that stage, well, you're wrong, because I'm freer than your thoughts. But I didn't touch art then for a long time. And then when we were getting it together, I suddenly felt, oh, we need to produce our own Ascended Master cards, our own images. And so I started with digital art, and I would never have thought that I could have produced these likenesses, and so I'm really excited just about, that you see something in life and then it doesn't seem to go anywhere, and then later on it comes back with force, and that's how the master's hands on your back, pushing you and say, yeah, you will do this, so I'm really thrilled about it. And we've got so many, we've got thousands, so I think we probably will end up leaving those in our will to somebody to carry on selling them.
But isn't it fabulous hearing that? Because, as you say, you change direction, or you have a thought, you think, oh no, 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 your rational brain saying no, 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 and then something just puts you in that direction, and that's what's wonderful, hearing about what you've done, is that you have changed directions. You've not allowed people to guide your life by saying you can't do this, you can't do that. When you look at what you've achieved, through from the piano lesson that you weren't allowed to have, through to going and doing ballet, in your 20s, which would have been, unheard of for a lot of people. And then, getting together with Alan, and then you're creating the Chakrascension, and then the cards, and going back to art. And when some art teacher in the past has said, no, no, you're no good, and things like that. And this is about listening, isn't it? Listening to you. You know yourself better than anybody. You know what you're capable of, and not taking other people's negative or closed-minded views.
Yeah. I think that the trouble is that society preconditions us to forget that we're divine, basically. And lots of people have no trouble learning something like Reiki, Chakrascension, and being positive about sending energy to other people. A lot of us struggle with being positive about ourselves. It's really interesting. When we always say to people, you have to accept that everyone, not just that person, everyone in this room, including yourself, is divine. And it's a real sort of, I think it's a real eye-opener when you start to actually think, oh, I can be nicer to myself. I remember around about 2000, I did some Jinkaido Reiki, which is actually sort of, that's interesting because it goes Usui, Hayashi, Seiji Takamori, and Takeuchi. So it's a different slight lineage that cuts out Mrs. Takata. And that was quite interesting because I actually found that was more about taming the tiger, as the Buddhists say, and actually about coming to more peace with yourself through that experience. Although I do think people are very hard on Mrs. Takata, because they, she brought it to the West, and if she hadn't have done what she did, then it wouldn't be the global phenomenon that it is now.
It's part of her journey, wasn't it? And I think maybe later in her life, she regretted some of the decisions that she made when she was a lot younger, especially some of the financial decisions,
yeah.
But then you can't go back and regret. You can only accept and move forward and change.
Yeah, and I think what we did, it's more a reflection on the West, really, because in the East, you would have gone to, you'd have valued your master, your sensei, and you would have worked for them in their establishment, and then you would have gained the achievements, the knowledge. She probably sat back and thought, what do they value most in the West? And it's money.
It's money.
Yeah.
And that was part of her story, was that, she was told that they only value money, so make it about money and people will come. And it's an amazing story that she's got as well.
I think also that's interesting as well, because I do think sometimes that still pervades, because we try to keep our Chakrascension prices reasonable and affordable. But we actually found that, almost people, if you're not charging £1,000 and an annual registration, people almost think, oh, there's no value to that. And I think it's that sort of mindset. So what we then decided is, come on, masters, you choose the people, we follow the guidance.
I think that's important, isn't it? And it's about, what is the true value of something? And then that says a lot about people as well, isn't it? Do they value themselves financially, or do they value themselves spiritually?
Mm-hmm.
And, but it's been absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much, Robert, for joining me.
Oh, it's been lovely.
And I'll pick up the emails, addresses, and your contact details, and I'll add them onto the YouTube
lovely.
video that I do. But all I can say is thank you very, very much for sharing this time to me and with me, and I hope to see you really soon.
Yes, absolutely. Lots of love. Bye-bye.